Snagajob, your #1 source for hourly jobs, and I am a job search coach here, and we're so excited to bring you our first ever live YouTube event. I will be here for the next half hour to answer all of your job search questions, and today we're going to focus specifically on how to find a job as a teenager. So it can be a little tricky, but we know a lot of the tips and the tricks to get you hired. So if you have any questions that you want us to ask on our YouTube page here below or next to us where you can write the questions, and reach out to us on Twitter at @Snagajob, and also our Facebook page, facebook.com/Snagajob, and we will make sure to answer your questions live at this time. So our first question comes to us, James from Pittsburgh, and he asks, how do I find my very first job? That's a really good question, James, and that can be a little scary, especially if you've never had a job before, you're not really sure how to search. Some of the best advice we can give you is to really make sure your resume stands out from other people who are searching for their very first job, because you want to make sure employers know that you are the most dedicated employee. So take a look at your resume and make sure you add things like a school experience that you have, extracurricular, and then also things like volunteer work and odd jobs, like maybe you had a lawn service or you did some babysitting. That all counts as experience, and employers love to see that as resumes. Loves to see that on your resume, so that can really help you stand out and get noticed. It's Stacy from Roanoke, Virginia wants to know, I'm 14 years old. Is that too early to look for a job? That's also a really good question, Stacy. Most of the employers on our site prefer you to be at least 16 before applying to jobs online. But the first thing you really want to do is check with your state. Look at your school's guidance department or your state's Department of Labor website and see if legally you can work at 14. And if so, the steps that you need to take to make sure that you're allowed. Maybe you'll need a worker's permit. But some of the best advice I can really give you about this is to go back to what we were saying to James earlier. Work on your resume so maybe that when you are a little older and employers are more likely to hire you, you'll have something to put on there. So at this point, for at least a year or two, really work on your volunteer work, make sure you get some babysitting jobs in there, and get really involved in your school activities so you'll have something to put on your resume. So I hope that helps. All right, Kira asked on our Facebook page, I've filled out over 50 applications. Why is it so hard to get a job? A great question. 50 applications does seem like a lot, and it can feel a little overwhelming, but we're in a competitive job market right now. So what that means is that there are a lot of people applying for that job. So you may find yourself applying to a little more before you hear back from the employer. So one of the best things you can do is after you apply, go to the employer and ask them to follow up on your application. Walk in, call, or email and say that you applied online, maybe through Snagajob, and tell them that you wanted to make sure your application went through and let them know if they have any questions. Employers actually tell us that following up on your application is very important, and a lot of job seekers overlook this step. But it's a great way to get your face and your personality out to an employer and show them that you're really interested in this position. And also, make sure you go back and overlook your applications that you have sent in and be sure that there are 0 spelling or grammatical errors. Employers tell this is the #1 mistake job seekers make, and you want to make sure that your resume doesn't reflect anything like that because it can make you look a little lazy. All right, John asked us on YouTube, what if you don't have a lot of experience? Great question, John. I know it can be a little intimidating when you're searching for jobs and you don't have a ton of experience out there. So think about the experience that you do have, volunteer work, odd jobs like we were talking about earlier. But if you don't have a lot of those or school extracurricular things that you can put on your resume, maybe go out and grab some, and then also talk to everyone that you know and tell them that you're looking for a job, and also your network's network. The more people you have that can attest to your work ethic, the better. So if you let all of your friends and family know, and they let all of their friends and family know that you're a great person, that you're looking for a job, that you're super dedicated, they'll have references that can back you up. So they may even know of a job that's not even open yet, that's going to come up soon online, and then you can be on the lookout for that, and you can say, so-and-so referred me, and so that you'll have a name backing you up. All right, now we have a question from Lacey in California. I'm really shy. How do I overcome this in interviews? I totally get that, Lacey. It may not come across right now, but I used to be a little shy too. So one of the best things you can do when you're preparing for an interview is to practice. Sit down with a friend or family member that you think can give you really constructive criticism and pretend like you are in the actual job interview. Come prepared with questions you want to ask and what you think they'll ask you. And the more you practice common job interview questions, the more comfortable you'll feel in a job interview setting. So if you come in feeling prepared, being asked where do you want to be in 5 years, what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths, why should we hire you, these are questions you'll probably get asked anyway in a job. So if you come with these answers prepared, then you'll feel a little less shy and a little more confident. All right, Steve from Brooklyn, New York asked, what insights or tips can you give me to find the right job? Steve, I have a ton of insights and tips for you. I guess one of the first things I should really mention is what we were talking about earlier, the no spelling mistakes or grammatical errors. Like I said, we talk to employers a lot all the time, and the biggest thing they tell us that can take a job applicant's resume and put it right into the red X pile is if there are grammatical or spelling errors on a resume. So what you really should do is before you apply to a job and before you start sending out those resumes, have a friend or family member look over your applications to make sure that there are zero mistakes. I do this when I was searching for jobs, and I love writing. I think I'm really great at it, but I also find that I'm always missing some kind of mistake that I just don't find, because when you read something over and over again, it all seems to look correct to you. So that, and then check your email address. I know it kind of sounds really silly, but employers tell us they get some really sketchy email addresses from employers or from job seekers, and it can make you look pretty unprofessional, and that's one of the first things that they're going to see when you apply to the job. So that's the first impression you want to make sure that you get right. Ben asked us on Twitter, I found a summer job, and I'm wondering what should I do when the summer is over and it's time to leave. That's a good question. So you've worked all summer, you've worked hard, you've made a great impression with your employer, and now it's kind of time to leave. So one of the first things that you should do is a couple weeks before it's your last day, remind your employer that you're going to be leaving in a couple weeks. I know you probably talked about it in the interview and you mentioned it when you first started, but there's a chance that they may not remember, and you don't want to just peace out on the last day and they totally forgot, and that could leave a bad taste in their mouth. Also, make sure you really bust it the past couple weeks, because remember, this is a summer job, so you might want to come back during the holiday season or next summer, and so you want them to remember you for all the great work you've been doing. So if you really stand out as an ideal employee, and they'll keep you in mind when it's time to hire again, or when you reach out again the next time you're looking for a job, they'll remember you were that awesome employee. And also suck up to your coworkers a little, maybe bring them a last day treat again, so they'll give you good references and they'll remember you, and then you should be good to go. All right, Oksana asked us on YouTube, I applied through Snagajob and now I have an interview today. That's so exciting. I was just going all your videos. They're so helpful. Thanks. Oh, that's not really a question, but I just love to hear that. It's so exciting. I hope your interview goes well, and I'm glad that you're looking through our videos. Because like I was saying, practicing before the interview is just so important. And the more you practice, the more you watch the videos, the more confidence you have, and that can really help you stand out as a great employee. So some interview tips I have for you. Maybe if you haven't already, look up where the actual interview place is. And I don't know, if your interview is in the next hour or so, then you may not have a chance to. But if you can, go drive by real quick and see how long it will take to really reach the destination. That way you won't have to worry about fighting traffic or anything. And then make sure you get there about 10 minutes early. Anything more than that could be a little awkward, and anything less than that could make you look like you're running a little bit behind. And since you've watched our videos, I know I don't have to tell you, but I'm going to remind you again. Make sure you dress professionally. Stay away from jeans, and try to just come across as the most professional employee you can. Jenna asked us, I'm 15 years old. Can I work? That's a great question, Jenna, and that kind of goes back to the question we answered a little bit earlier about being 14. While 15 is much closer to the ideal 16 range that a lot of employers have when they're hiring teens, 15 in a lot of states that you can work. So again, check with your state's labor department, check with your guidance counselor, and make sure that if you are legally able to work, that you don't need paperwork. And then if you do, try and get your worker's permit before time. That way you'll come in to the employer, you have something to show them, say, I am legally able to work. And so a lot of places won't let you apply online as a teenager, so maybe see what places online do apply 16 and over, and then go in person and explain your situation, and that can help you out well. And if you go in person, dress professionally, and make a great impression, then you can really give off the fact that you are dedicated and would make a great employee. All right, Amani asked us on YouTube, my family goes on vacation every year together. Is this something I should mention during the interview process, or wait till I get hired? And that's a very good question, Amani, and I totally understand why you might be a little nervous. I totally get that way too. I wouldn't mention this maybe in the very first interview because you want them to really concentrate on why you would make the great employee. But then when the hiring process gets further, maybe it's a second interview, maybe they call to ask you some other questions, then just mention it on the fly. As if you make a great first impression in that first interview, then they're just going to want you as an employee. You know, a dedicated employee is worth so much more than maybe a not so great employee that can stay there longer. And everybody goes on summer vacations. You're not the first person to take a vacation, and you certainly won't be the last one. So while it can be a little scary, if you make that great first impression, then they should be okay with it. Okay, here's another question we have. I've never been to a job interview. What are some tips you can give me to get rid of the jitters? Totally get that. Job interviews are, nobody really looks forward to a job interview. Again, what we were talking about earlier is practicing beforehand. That can really help give you confidence. And then also make sure you eat a little something beforehand, whether it's a granola bar, something small, something that's not going to really make you full, but something that's going to help with the butterflies a little bit. And take a couple deep breaths before you walk into the building. It can give you a confidence. It'll calm you down, and it'll help that oxygen flow. And something like that, there's never going to be a surefire way to ever just walk into an interview just not nervous. But if you take steps, like calming yourself down and being practiced and confident, then you should be okay. All right, Ralph reached out and asked, I just graduated. Do you have any resume tips for me? Now, first of all, congratulations on graduating. That's very exciting. And yes, I have got plenty of tips for you. First of all, depending on if you're a high school or college graduate, I don't know. In my high school, we didn't have high school email addresses, but they might do that now. But you want to create an email address just for your job search. So if you're college and you're used to using your college email address, just go ahead and change that and create one professional email address. This is really great because it gives you a chance to have all of your job search emails in one place, and that way you don't have to sift through all the junk and all the other email. And just simply make it your first and last name. Keep it as appropriate as possible, as simple as possible, so employers will be able to reach out to you. And also, if you're looking for your first job out of school, then go ahead and keep your resume, your education information at the top of your resume, so employers can see what you've been up to, so you don't have these big employee gaps. And then if you've had internships or other jobs, then you can go ahead and move your education to the bottom of your resume, because you really want the employer to see the work that you have done and the experience that you do have that can make you stand out as an employee. Jim asks, how do I answer the question, what's your biggest weakness? That is a really good question, and that is a very scary question. Because on one hand, you don't want to go off to the employer and say, I am amazing for this job, but oh, look, here is everything that's horrible about me. So that can be a little scary. So we like to think about something that you can take that you're not so good at. Like, be honest, everybody has weaknesses. So think about something that you do have a weakness and turn it into a positive. Stay away from like the really, really lame and cliched answers. I care too much, I work too hard. Like those are predictable, and everybody, like, that's just bad. Employers are on to that. It doesn't work anymore. So think about something you do have. Like for me, I sometimes run into organizational problems. I can be a little flighty. I have stuff everywhere. So I would say that I have been working. Take what you've done and how you're able to fix it. So I would say I am not the best at staying organized, and I can be a little messy, but I've really taken steps to try and fix that. For example, I make a to-do list every day so I can cross everything out as it's coming to me, and I make sure before I leave at work at the end of every day, I clean up my workstation, so by the next day it's already there and ready for me. And that's just one example, but just be honest, and then you can add something silly at the end. Oh yeah, and I never wear the same colored socks or something. You can just end it with a little humor. People seem to like that. All right, Stephanie asks, all of my friends are getting summer internships now that school is out. What are the benefits of internships? That's a really good question, Stephanie, because when you're looking for something, a job versus an internship, you may find that internships pay a little less than some of the jobs, and you may lean towards a job. But internships are a great way to gain some real-world experience. And I know you've probably heard that a lot, but internships look fantastic on resumes. So if you're thinking long-term about after you graduate, an internship showing that you actually have real business experience is going to look just fantastic, and it may even be able to count for some of your college credit, so that's something to think about too. But you've got that, and then another big benefit is to having internships is the connections you're going to make. I know here at Snagajob we hire our interns all the time, so we get really excited when a new fresh class comes in, and then we also, even the ones that we may not have room for, they're using us as their references all the time. We're on the lookout for jobs for them. We're always giving them references. We're helping them out in any way we can, because internships are so powerful, and that was how I got my first job out of college. So it's definitely something to think about when you're thinking long term. All right, Simon wants to know, is it okay to use friends and family as a reference? Okay, that can be a little tricky. You want to avoid using your mom and your dad, for sure. Brothers and sisters, that just looks, well, it's a little pathetic. So what you want to do is think about people who can attest to your work ethic when you're asking for references. If you haven't had any work experience, think about maybe teachers that you can use, or that you've had that can really talk about what a hard worker you are and what a great student you are. Think about maybe if you volunteered somewhere, think about the volunteer coordinator. If you mow your neighbor's lawn, use them. If you babysit for friends of the family, use them. Just use people that can talk about how professional you are, and that'll really, really help you stand out and get noticed. You just don't want to use, like, oh, it's my brother's friend who I grew up with. They could probably think great things about you, but they can't talk to how hard of a worker you are, unless you have done odd jobs for them, and then it's okay. All right, we have a question from YouTube. Is being active on social media a plus for job selection, and do recruiters actually check them for background verifying? That is a great question. A lot of it depends on what kind of position you're going for, as far as how active you want to be in social media. If you're going for a social media coordinator position, then they're going to probably look at your Twitter feed to make sure that you stay up to date on the trends. But if you're going for something maybe like engineering or something, then that might not be important. But whatever the case may be, how active you want to be, how non-active you want to be, you just want to make sure you're as careful as possible when it comes to your social media channels. Employers have been pretty honest about the fact that they will check your social media channels. I mean, just do a quick Google search for your name, and your Facebook page will show up. So you want to do everything you can to make sure that, A, everything is appropriate, and B, if you don't want it to be appropriate, then everything is as hidden as possible. And Facebook actually has a feature where you can go in and see what your profile looks like from someone else's point of view, from someone you're not friends with or not connected to. So I highly recommend that. We actually have a blog post that we'll send out there that says how to check your Facebook privacy settings and the right way to look for them. And same thing goes with Twitter and Instagram. If employers can find it and you're not going to keep it private, just keep it as as tame as possible. If you don't want your mom to see it, don't put it out there. That's kind of the rule we use. All right, Althea asks this on YouTube. Is it a bad thing to be overqualified for a position? I've read about this topic before. Okay, that's a really good question. Being overqualified for a position can really scare employers away. They might be worried that you're going to leave. They could be worried that you'll just get bored. So what you want to do if you are overqualified for the position, because it is possible, you want to make sure that you are taking the steps that are necessary to make sure that you aren't going to look bored and you aren't going to leave, to reassure them of those facts. So when you are interviewing for them or you're writing a cover letter and you know that you're overqualified, that's something they will be worried about, then you should just go ahead and address it. Mention that I know I have more experience than this calls for, but I really want to get my foot in the door in this company, or I'm really interested in this industry and I'm hoping to learn more. Just reassure them that you're not going anywhere and you're taking your job search seriously. They want to make sure that you're looking for their job and not just any job. So you don't want to come across as desperate. All right, Ryan asks on YouTube, how can I know that the job is current? Okay, so if you're asking about on Snagajob on our site, if how up to date the job is, you can look at, when you're looking in your search results, you can post view by date, and it should refilter your results to having the most current and up-to-date job on the top of the screen, meaning that an employer either just posted it or just edited it. And then you might go a little further down and you'll see some older ones, and you should still make sure you apply to those. They may not be actively looking as some of the ones at the top, but they are collecting resumes. And what some employers will do is they will collect resumes and applications throughout the year to prepare for unpredictable hiring needs. So, for example, 3 bartenders just don't show up one day and they all quit at the same day, and that employer needs to fill those positions ASAP. So instead of posting a job online waiting for applications, they can pull from all the applications that they've been collecting through the year. So while those can be a little more frustrating than the ones that you hear back from automatically, we do hear from job seekers who get hired at jobs they've applied to weeks, even months after applying. So it's definitely still worth it to keep an eye on. All right, Justin wants to know, what is the best way to reach out to hiring managers? Great question. So after you apply, like we talked about earlier, the best thing you can do and the most important thing you need to do is follow up. Actually, you should consider that just the next step in the job search process. And you want to make sure when you do follow up that you are talking to the decision makers. It can be easy to go in to a place and like a restaurant and retail, ask to see the manager and say that you want to follow up your application. And they say the manager's not there and drop off your resume. It's very common, that does happen, but you want to make sure that you get your face and your resume out to the manager. So when you do go in, ask when the manager will be back and then follow up again at that time. You still feel free to leave your resume, and hopefully they will pass it along to the manager, but you just want to make sure that you are talking to the right people. Susan asked, I heard you talking about references earlier. How do I ask for a reference? That is a great question. Great question, Susan. Asking for a reference, it can be a little nerve-wracking, especially if it's a teacher or someone you don't know all that well, but that can attest to your work ethic. It's actually really, really flattering to be asked to be a reference for someone. I know for me, I'm just so honored. So think about just being honest, going up to them when they're not very distracted, and explain why you want them to be a reference. Especially if it's someone you haven't done a ton of work with, but that that can talk great things about you. Like, I've really enjoyed working volunteering for your organization this past year. I'm starting to think about getting some jobs. Would it be okay if I used you as a reference? And it's really, really, really important to make sure that you actually ask about how to be a reference, if they can be a reference. You don't want someone just calling them out of the blue asking if so-and-so used you as a reference, is that okay? And then having no idea what you're talking about. It makes you look bad, it throws them off. So you just want to make sure that you let them know as soon as possible. And then after you find out they used you as a reference, you should really thank them. Maybe send them a thank you card, maybe make them a little gift. The more sucking up that you can do to them, the better. And also, they'll know that you're looking for a job, so they can keep an eye out for you for any jobs that may come up that you may not have heard about. All right, Michael reached out and asked, how early should I arrive to an interview? Very good question, Michael. I recommend getting there about 10 minutes early. Anything before that, you could be running the risk of being late. Maybe your clock is fast, their clock is slow, whatever. That's just not worth it. And then anything earlier than 10, like 15, 20 minutes, that could just make things a little awkward. You're just kind of sitting around, twiddling your thumbs. So 10 minutes shows that you're ready, you're prepared, you're excited, but you're not going to weird anyone out by just standing there and staring at them. And also, what I like to do is the night before an interview, actually do what I call a drive-by, which sounds a little sketchy, but drive to the place and ask and see how long it's going to take you. If you can drive at the same time where you would be leaving for your interview, that would be wonderful, so you get a sense of traffic and whatnot. Because I can't, there's nothing worse than being stuck in traffic, panicking, knowing that you're going to a job interview and that you're going to be late. Especially if you don't have the hiring manager's phone number. So yeah, do a drive-by beforehand, but then try and get there about 10 minutes early. All right, Trayvon wants to know, how do I tell employers about my strengths without sounding too cliche or too confident? It's a great question. So yeah, avoid saying I'm so wonderful, I'm amazing, I'm the hardest worker you'll ever have. They've heard those things before, they get them, and it's just not impressive. So think about your strengths that you are passionate about, or things that you do differently than others. So say you're interviewing for a retail associate, and you know that this company, from the research you've done before the interview, you know that they're passionate about customer service. So you can bring that into your answer. I noticed on your website that customer service is something you're very passionate about, and I consider that a huge strength of mine. I have experience working with people during my volunteer work when I was volunteering at a thrift store, and I realized that customer service is something that I really want to get into, and I know that's a big strength of mine. I really enjoy interacting with people, and I'm not shy, and I think that really plays up to my customer service strength. So something like that shows that A, you've done your research on the company, and B, that you are a really good fit for the position, because customer service, but you can use anything like organizational skills or time management, things that you can take into the position. You don't want to just rattle off your, high school weight benching stats on and on. Like, they don't need to hear that. All right, and I think we have time for one more question. So Emma asked, I'm always uncertain of how to answer the question, how much do you want to make? I totally get that, Emma. That kind of scares me too. So kind of avoid answering this question or see what you can do to work around this question until you're in like the salary negotiation part of the job. So if they ask you in the interview and you're not ready to quite talk about it yet, you can say something like, I'm very excited about this opportunity, and I would like to talk about this when we're further in the process. But then also, if they kind of push you on it, do some research before the interview to really figure out what maybe positions like that are making in your area. I mean, there are websites out there where you can type in the position and the location and find out what you're making, and that could give you some kind of baseline. And also, you can use what you've earned in the past, especially if it's a similar position. In my last job, I was making around $9 an hour, and so for this position, I'm hoping to make around 10. Something like that can really show that you're worthy, you've done it before, and that you've thought about it. So it's an awkward question, and they're probably used to awkward answers, so I wouldn't stress about it too much. Oh, we had one more comment from David on YouTube that said your videos are really helpful. Thank you so much, David. We love to hear that. Remember, we are here to help you with your job search. We know that job search can be a little tricky, and it's not always the most fun thing in the world. But we are really here to help you. Like, this is our specialty. We want to be here. So if you do want to see us to make any specific videos, please comment on any of our videos, and we will make sure to get back to you. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll get a new job search video every week. As a teaser, we have one that we're releasing tomorrow, giving you steps on how to follow up in person to a job application, which is so important. So this has been really fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, and that we haven't had too many technical issues, which is exciting. And we will definitely be doing this again, so be on the lookout. Bye!